going to have to act if we want to live in a different world.
Welcome back to the channel, lads and ladies, and welcome to some of my gameplay. We're in medias res here, as I heard an enemy vehicle in this area, here in my, however you say scorpion in Polish. There's some letters I'm not supposed to pronounce all of them, so the scorpion. Sherman, say it with me now. Firefly. I did it. Okay. Yes, the cursed Sherman. But it really does well in War Thunder, especially with its tasty new lower BR. A Weeble Wobble, give them the Wibble Wop, and get the gun on target, pop them in the engine, and no doubt you've heard what you're not hearing, and that is any sound from War Thunder. I'm still having issues recording sounds with NVIDIA Shadowplay, and I just don't know. I don't know why, and all my recordings have no sound, and it makes me a sad panda. But I did want to share some replays with you guys today. I'm very excited about the things that I've been seeing from you all, and I've really been enjoying War Thunder a lot now that I get away from Genshin Impact, as I'm pretty much in the end game, such as it is in that game, and there's no content left. It's just powering up my characters, which is my favorite thing to do anyway, but they stifle you. There's only so much progress you're allowed to make in a day, because unlike War Thunder, they don't have a maniac pace of development for the game, and they don't have hundreds and hundreds of characters for you to play. There's actually a fairly small number of them, but there are dozens and dozens of ways of squirreling away your resources and squandering them, and also looking toward the future where you can find some more nuts to embezzle. Anyway, we are drilling holes the British way in enemy tanks, and that is with style and puissance, to steal a French word, and yes we can, because they don't have the economy to keep us from doing it. And here we're going for the ammo rack on the KV, but why would you do something so foolish? It's so far deep down in the scullery of that Soviet boat tank that not even your saltiest sailor could dig up an ammo rack explosion. But we don't need to worry so much facing such shamans. I know we got the loader, so he'll still be on the reload, and we take him down. Definitely nothing lacking in the reload and armor penetration department for this round, although I still find the 17-pounder to be lackluster in post-penetration damage most of the time. And the mind baffles at some of the things that happen to War Thunder, especially with regard to side shots these days. Something about volumetric something client stability, and you get this witch's brew of odd interactions about 5% of the time. But you know what? That's okay. If it rains shit on everyone, well then you just get used to wiping it off now, don't you? Anyway, here we're causing some astronomical phenomena of our own with 8 kills in the whatever the heck you pronounce that Polish. You know what? Google's a thing. Maybe I'll give it a try. But the Wyvern, yet another British powerhouse that continues to drop in BR. It doesn't have the best performance air to air, although in its one strong suit, that being top speed, it really has always been king, and now it can't even really face things that can match it in straight line speed. And some beautiful rockets. We were definitely spamming the RP3s there, but against a Wibble Wop, you gotta either have that good wiggle, which we definitely don't, or take some bold chances, or just, not be in the neighborhood. But why would I do that? So, picking up my 9th kill, which is always nice. And again, enjoying what this one of the earliest contra rotating prop aircraft in the game has to offer. It's a heavy boy, and you definitely feel it in the maneuvers, but you do produce a good amount of thrust as well. Look at the size of those propeller blades. And you may notice the 1200 cannon rounds in the wings. And while the Hispanos may not be the best cannon in-game, and I think they're still sort of underrepresented in terms of lethality against armor, they have been absolutely shredding planes lately, for me. I still see people complaining on Reddit, but they're also posting really old videos. The cult of affirmation. How we know you all too well. Anyway, what else can I say about this plane? It's very enjoyable. There are few aircraft that can engage in CAS and anti-air at the same time, and the Wyvern is probably not one of them. It just doesn't have the ability to maintain energy or to maneuver at low speed, and I'm realizing now that ticking thing that I'm seeing fly by on the propeller hub is part of the little mosquito fella I have there, little Slick Dick or whatever his name is. But critical hit through the roof of an early model T-34, I'll definitely take it, and I'm hoping not to take ground fire, because we know there are powerful German and also Soviet cannons. The Soviets have, or sorry, I should say the Russians, as the Chinese are a different flavor of Sovietskis available in the game now. But the Chinese also have a few. No, I was saying, sorry, the Russians and the Germans have some very capable cannon SPAA at this tier, and you cannot survive a hit or four. As well, there's just something about how War Thunder has been handling data recently, and I think it provides some stability in other areas, and I could be wrong, maybe it's just a bug, but I think it's part of their data optimization. But aircraft don't notice hits as much as they used to. So that's just the way things are. Pork, after all, is a nice white meat. But I have so many cannon rounds left in this thing that I just have to pester ground targets. Now, I could go back to base and pick up some RP3s probably before the match is over, but we got a pretty healthy bar on this side, and as you know, when pilots see an open bar, they're probably going to linger for a while. And surprisingly, even after that rampage, that massacre that we engaged in earlier in the match, it looks like the American and British forces are being pushed back. Now, that's no big surprise for British Expeditionary Force, but to see such a thing happen to my grand American army, it truly does make me a sad little panda. It's the second time I've been a sad panda tonight. So let me tell you a little bit about what my baby Joshi has been doing. He has been having he's been having the screamy farts, I tell you, where I think they call it colic, where a baby gets really gassy and it pushes on their insides and it makes them, well, shriek in pain because it hurts like crazy. But I would just say that he inherited his father's angry butthole, because I get colicky and I'm a grown man, and that's just the way things are. So he's had a little bit of that today. It was a lot worse yesterday, but that's rough. It's hard to see your kid in pain and not really be able to do anything about it, and he's got no idea what's going on, which the way I'm flying this Wyvern, I can kind of relate to that. Actually, this thing does, again, it produces so much energy. You pick up a huge amount of speed in a dive, and then you carry that through fairly well as you pull away from the ground. But just continuous maneuvering absolutely kills the energy of this thing. But I gotta say, I really do like the way it flies, and it just, looking at it from a third person perspective, it just looks great in the air. what's not so heartwarming is the Yak 9M that just slotted in to R6. He has every advantage on us at this altitude. We were at a very low airspeed when we started to pull out of that dive, but again, this thing picks up speed fairly well. Even so, we're going to have to pull a little bit of the old wiggle wobble to get away, and indeed we did. We got back to our airfield, and so let's go ahead and move on, because nothing else really happened in that match other than my bold victory of bravely running away. Here we have WePrxud? I'm going to say WePrxud. Why not? WePrxud. So, we've got our prideful boy over here in the... what's BMP? Okay, yes, I got it. And he got his first kill. He had been pestering enemies, scouting them, and sniping at them the way people tend to do on this map, on the 6 and 7 line. And I tend to be one of those players that tries to get into that river area fairly early on, and then move just to the side of the sea point. You can see in between the road that goes through the sea point and the next one over, there's some room, and that tends to be where I set up and catch people as they try and push around on that flank, or myself get killed. Excuse me, a little hiccup there. Get killed in the process. But Weepy over here. There we go. We pee. You know what? We really do. If you don't, then my condolences. I had a time in my life where I didn't pee. I was on a catheter, so like they put a tube up where you'd rather not have a tube go, and they inflate a little balloon so it doesn't pull out, and then it just kind of drains itself. I had major spine surgery, and that was a thing. Also, I noticed there's a little screen that pops out on the BMP when it gets in the water. That's pretty neat. No doubt keeps the water from splashing up over that frontal plate and slightly submerging the front of the BMP. No doubt that wouldn't be so great going right into the engine gratings like that. Anyway, this Soviet wedge is no surprise to fans of the upper mid-tiers in War Thunder, and Weepy has already pulled off some pretty good maneuvers, capturing the sea point, taking down a couple of foes, and being a general nuisance, and he will continue to do such. Spotting a target that turns out to be a friendly and getting hit by, what is that, artillery? Surprising, I tell you, that he didn't hold break, but you know what, hold break is just all over the place. It always has been, and I somewhat think that it might always be. We'll have to see. It's kind of interesting the way hold break has been brought into the game. In naval forces, it actually makes a lot more sense. It's basically on the lines of, if you get hit by a blast strong enough, it'll hull break anything. And I kind of think that's the way it should be for tanks, honestly. And hear me out. I know it's a bummer to get one shot by things, but how many times have you hit some medium tank or whatever on a part of armor that definitely wouldn't survive getting hit by, say, the Doom Barnes, what is it, like 200 and some millimeter Hesh? Yeah, and then you'll hit like a fuel tank or the driver or something, and it eats up all of the shrapnel for some god-awful reason, and you don't even kill their gunner. When in fact, that should be a hull break on just about anything. I think that hull break should work on a really simple system. Just if the piece of armor that the round hits is of a certain thickness, then an explosion of a certain strength should hull break the vehicle, it would be the idea of just blowing out that entire piece of armor, say that entire side of the tank, or blowing off the turret ring, something like that. And that would be a lot easier than modeling the durability for extreme compromise of structure for each individual piece, and just having a system saying, okay, if this is the thickness, or you can even go with the mass if you're using volumetric armor, which we really should be doing at this point in War Thunder since the shells are volumetric. But that's a dream. There's thousands of vehicles to work on, so one thing at a time. But if there's a big enough explosion against a certain size of armor, then there should just be a formula for hull break and have it be applied for every vehicle. No more adding or removing hull break to vehicles. Have a system that people can actually make sense of, and then people can know whether it's working properly or not, and not just guess and go, well, I wonder if Gaijin implemented it here. I wonder if the parameters for this particular vehicle's hull break are different for that other vehicle. It's a little bit too much smoke and mirrors for me, and even though it's used as a balancing factor, I'd like to see it based on a formula and not fairy dust and Russian programmers' farts. I mean, you smell what I'm cooking here? It would be like the ballistics formulae in War Thunder, something that people can look at and judge for what it is, instead of just guessing about how things are supposed to work. And somewhere along the line, Weepy's picked up another couple of kills. Cheeky, nicely done, and on top of that, not only am I happy to share some BMP gameplay, but I'm also happy to share some moments from a new contributor to the channel. So, WePrxud, WePrxud, Weepy, whatever your name may be, it's been a pleasure showing off this video where you're playing extra cheeky in an extra light tank. You might call it an IFV. But, I don't know, is it classed as an IFV in War Thunder? Now, one thing that I noticed here is that damage to the cannon breach of whatever Swedish abomination that is definitely was enough to disable his gun. So instead of rolling back and forth in and out of cover here and having to wait for the gun to settle, you probably could have just set up camp in front of him and taken him down. Unfortunately, that shot against the, what is that, a Fiat, whatever Italian wheelie boy that was, I forget the name, but that one bounced. And I guess it makes sense for a Heat FS round to bounce off of highly sloped armor, as you would have to activate the detonator on the warhead in order to have a successful armor penetration. At least that's what she tells me. Here we are with not a new contributor to the channel, always a pleasure, flightsimtest, showing us how best to play, which one is this called? The P30, okay, there's the P39, and then there's the P38. I want to say this is the P38, and then I don't know what letter goes after it. Let's pretend it's a G. In any event, it's going to pull off some great maneuvers that I'm used to seeing in my own P38, and it's really making me want to hop into my my premium P38. Not the XP, which is now a rarity in War Thunder, but that other one that has an absolutely ludicrous climb rate and amount of horsepower. Truly shines at high altitude, and 5K's not exactly low these days, but not as much of an altitude as you would expect out of this, what's it called, escort fighter slash interceptor. And these things definitely did a boatload of intercepting in the Pacific. They absolutely shredded Japanese aircraft, both logistical and maniacal. And they really showed their stuff against Japan. And if Japan had only historical production aircraft in their lineups against these things, they would definitely feel the pain. There's really not much a Zero can do against a P-38 if flown properly. These things just have so much power and ability at all altitudes, and the amount of speed that they can maintain is just incredible. Add to that the death beam of death and the relative fragility of production Japanese aircraft, and you're looking at a serious advantage to the disciplined pilot. And after shooting down 3 foes and looking down upon 3 or 4 Teutonic enemies at a lower energy level than himself, but not so low that they're unapproachable. That's another mistake the beginners will make in the P-38. I hope this is a P-38, is that they'll dive too hard and then lock up and have to really deal with the consequences in a very negative way. But take advantage of your energy advantage and pull the enemy into maneuvers that they can't really follow you in, as much as the first vertical pull of an enemy 410 is pretty incredible. And you may hear the haunted toy going off behind me. That is not a sleeping child moaning in discomfort or some other means of malaise, but instead it's a haunted toy. So that's just the way things work. Every now and then, one of those tiny Chinese hands that are assembling these simple electronics on the assembly line in the sweatshops, as they were, it just, kind of snaps off inside the toy as their little malnourished bones break, and a little piece of their soul goes into the tiny, cheap Chinese motherboard that makes up the heart of these learning toys, and thus you have the haunted toy. Is that a little bit of a nightmare fuel for you? And yet, flightsimtest himself, I posted a video showing off the haunted toy. I hope you enjoy it. You really want to turn up the volume. I didn't level it out for that one. And wear headphones in a dark room. Anyway, the ME-410 goes down. I'm getting silly. And that brings flightsimtest up to 4 kills in a match that has just been absolutely beautiful. Speaking of, this is a fairly nice looking, it looks like a, what's it called? A player camouflage, one of those marketplace skins, I think. I think the nightmare part comes from the Friday the 13th event that happens at War Thunder every now and then, where you can kit yourself out like a slasher, but the rest of it looks like some fancy pants American pilots custom regalia. I think maybe the snake thing is a decal as well, but I could be wrong. Maybe the horse as well. I think I recall seeing that somewhere, but I don't know. In any event, looks pretty good. I'm not a huge fan, now that I mention it, of that weathered aluminum look on the central body pieces. I get what they're going for with that, but I prefer a little bit cleaner look. It just aesthetically, I like it, and I get that, these planes that served in the Pacific in the salt would definitely see some corrosion and weathering and whatnot, but I just kind of like seeing the look of a plane that's been well loved as well, because of course the winning side has downtime to do things like polish their airframe. The stories. Anyway, so where are we? We're high up, high in energy, and with a nice vantage point. You can see flightsimtest has brought his P-38 back up to 5K, but he's not going beyond that. You get to a point where you have so much altitude that you just can't spot targets, and he was just waiting for, the 1 or 2 enemy aircraft to move away from their airfield. So the Focke-Wulf 190, which even though he's fresh off the airstrip, is still very capable of defensive maneuvering. flightsimtest needs to definitely pull back on the throttle and up on the stick here, starting to lock up around upwards of 400 miles per hour. Definitely more speed than he needs against the Focke-Wulf, who's now turning back toward his airfield. flightsimtest setting some good lead on his guns and possibly getting some hits, but nothing is going to take down that enemy Focke-Wulf so fast. Now, if I was that Focke-Wulf, I'd do a lot of rolling and do a very aggressive rolling scissors. The enemy pilot did not pull off such a maneuver, and you just can't let a P-38 have a solid look at your tail. The advantage the Focke-Wulf has is in low speed maneuverability and also low speed acceleration and especially roll rate. So you really want to use those to your advantage if you're in a situation like that Focke-Wulf pilot had. I'd actually be kind of excited for that. I feel like I could take a P-38 that has a bit more energy than me because they've got to dive on you, they've got to spend that energy, and you can wear them out because the Focke-Wulf does recover energy a little bit faster than the P-38 at low altitude. And again, you have that insane roll rate. You roll over, pull away, roll over, pull away, and you get just enough of the up and down in the vertical axis to stay out of the very tight aim of the nose guns on the P-38. And unless you're up against a really skilled pilot who has a lot of discipline and is good at predicting your moves, and also you aren't able to build that feedback loop where you get a really good feel for where they're aiming and you stay just out of that, the Focke-Wulf is definitely capable of doing that. Unless, of course, you decide to fly in more or less a straight line back toward your airfield. Well, then you really don't learn anything, you know. You've got to take those chances. Sometimes you just got to say, I'm going to defensive fly the best way I know how and see what happens. Because you don't learn anything by heading back toward your airfield, and that's not always a bad decision. Sometimes it works out for you. Sometimes you can use that airfield, especially if you're not far away from it, to get some separation and give you a chance to break the energy difference between you and a foe. But you're never going to outclimb a P-38. I don't care what battle rating you're at. And that means that all you can really do against one that has higher energy than you is try and get them to maneuver with you, and then you stand a chance. And you know, one day you defensive fly against a P-38, another day it's against a Mustang, one day you're in an American aircraft and you're flying against a BF-109. But every day that you decide to get stuck in and use what you know and see how that works, that's a day where you learn something. If nothing else, you learn what doesn't work. BF-109 with maybe a tad more energy than our guy. Getting those P-38 flaps used against him as FST trades energy for drag and is now racing toward his foe. A time to throttle back and pull up on the stick, and that might be what FST is doing. But you can see at these speeds the P-38 really maneuvers well, and the cannon hits hard. I think that was the 20 mil exploding the tail of the 109, and he's got no elevator control. He's going straight into the drink for FST's 6th kill and the end of the action in this replay. Guys, thanks for sending in your videos, your replays that I recorded and had audio difficulties. And as always, if you'd like to send in your own replays or just connect with me, there's a link to my Discord, which is the best way to get a hold of me. Catch you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.